I call this presentation ET a Solar System Adventure. This is going to be about a board game that we are developing, and we decided to call it like that, Solar System Adventure. And of course, it has been nicely sponsored by Europlanet. It's been a great opportunity to develop this project. So my name is Catarina Leote. I'm from the Science Communication Group of the Institute of Astrophysics and Space Sciences in Portugal. We are a research institute with several research groups in different fields, covering more or less what there is, from planetary sciences, stars, galaxies, cosmology, instrumentation. We also have a dedicated science communication group, the one I belong to, and this project ended up being a collaboration between the researchers, the research team in planetary sciences, and the science communication group. So in 2019, we saw this opportunity, the public engagement funding scheme. We wanted to develop a project, and this was a great opportunity to apply for additional funding. We wanted to create an educational tool, so something that would be accessible and versatile. And then, of course, something linked with Europlanet, so increase the general knowledge about the planetary sciences. And in this case, we decided to stick to the solar system. Also something that would in general promote an interest for science and for astronomy in particular, something to encourage curiosity and logic and creative thinking. And also, we were wanting also to reach new publics. So we thought of a board game. So instead of going for the digital format, and you can find a lot of things digital, we decided to kind of go back to the basics and use this more empathetic approach, maybe to stimulate the critical thinking and interaction between people. And also has a target group. We thought about children from 6 to 12 years old. The reason for this, or one of the reasons for this, is that looking at the school curricula, at least here in Portugal, the coverage of astronomy topics is not it's not very good. Children between 10 and 12 do not have astronomy in their curricula. And younger children, often the teachers do not have good resources, or at least good resources in Portuguese, or the knowledge to be able to pass on this information. And it tends to be something that children like, all these astronomy subjects. This was a bit of a challenge. This is one of the challenges actually that I can mention right now. 6 to 12 years old. It's a big age difference, and a 6-year-old child is totally different from a 12-year-old, also in terms of knowledge, in terms of ways of thinking. So this was a bit of a challenge to try to find a game that would kind of fit more or less all. So here, because we would be talking about children, and maybe starting straight on with planets could be maybe not so easy, we decided to start from something that they would be familiar with. So we thought about, okay, all kids will know about animals, and they will be familiar with the environments on Earth in which those animals live. And we thought, well, how about using astrobiology? Let's think about maybe some aliens, and these aliens, of course, would be adapted to different environments in the solar system, whether it's a planet or a moon in the solar system. So this was the basis for the game. We applied for the funding scheme, and we got awarded this. The project was accepted. We had a bit less funding than we had applied for at the time, which limited a bit what we could do. So we got 7,500 euros at the time, which was good so far. It just compromised a bit the printing of copies of the game. So after coming up with this concept of having aliens, designing aliens that are adapted to solar system objects, and by the way, let me introduce you to Flotte. This is Flotte from Venus, from the clouds of Venus. So we had to think also of mechanics for the game mechanics. How is it going to be? Of course, we are not. None of us is really game developers, so we decided to use games that are more or less known, like Snakes and Ladders and Trivial Pursuit. So more or less mechanics that have been used already, and try to adapt them to the solar system. And then we had to design the aliens, which was also super fun to think of how would an alien be adapted to a certain environment. And then, of course, we had to test this over and over, which was a challenge, and I'll go back to it. And now we're going through professional design and illustration. We want to have a print and play version that anybody can on our website, so anybody can just download the files and print them and play at home. For a start, we will have a Portuguese and an English version, but we will have translations in other languages. And then with additional funding, we want to produce physical copies of the game and then distribute it to science centers, schools, whoever would be interested. So we are the design and illustration, and we are starting to work on the translations. And as soon as we have the print and play version, we will start applying for additional funding. So this is more or less how the game looks like, at least the prototype version. We have a board. The aliens can, or the players can move around the board. To change orbit, they need to answer questions about the solar system, and they collect little alien cards, which are like a three-piece puzzle that they have to get put together. So find an alien, and then they have to discover the home planet or the home moon of this planet, and they discover this by playing the game and discovering more information about the planets and the moons in the solar system. So that was a prototype version. This is how it's starting to look like with the final design and illustrations. The illustrations are done by a well-known illustrator of books for children. So we wanted it to give it a really fun and appealing look. And it's also going through the design. So you can see here at the top, we have the question cards. On the side, we have the alien cards, and on the bottom left, we have the cards with information about about some objects of the solar system, Neptune in this case. And yes, there were many challenges. As I said, none of us is a game developer. So this was the first version, the first prototype. It was a mess. It took me about 10 minutes just to lay all the pieces together. We were way too ambitious in this first version. So we learned that less really is more. It's much easier. It's much better to start with a very easy, basic game mechanics, and then eventually add a bit of complexity if it's okay. But otherwise, really stick to something very simple. So the rules have to be simple, and it has to be easy for any player to understand. And here we want to engage with little children, with young children, but also, for example, with grandma or grandpa or uncles or aunts, so the whole family. So this is a game that could be played in a more formal context in a school. Being with a teacher kind of helping the children to play, but also in a more familiar context. So it's important that it's simple and easy to understand the rules. Another challenge was definitely also how to design the aliens. How accurate versus how creative could we be if we actually think of astrobiology? Probably something more like a bacteria would be most likely, but at some point we ended up with a larva, for example. This is a larva from the moon. And so we had to be also kind of fun, and we had to add some features that could be relatable with the environments. Which was another problem, actually, to try to define clear categories in the planets and in the and for our aliens. Given the variety of possibilities you have in biology, and also in how varied solar system objects can be with different environments in one object, of course, just like on Earth. And then also, creating content adapted to the target public. So how far could we go, for example, with the questions? We wanted the game to be fun and challenging, but we also want to make sure that it's playable and not too frustrating. So where do you draw the line between, okay, you're learning something, or no, this is too frustrating to play? Yeah, another problem was the communication between the team members. Even though from the beginning our team was already divided between Porto and Lisbon, two cities in Portugal, because the institute is in different cities. But even so, with COVID, it really became even more complicated. Even the people in the same city, we all had to communicate only remotely. But worse than that was testing in times of social distancing, because we had the first prototype of the game ready in March, April 2020, which was exactly the peak of the pandemic, when everybody was really at home. So this was really a big challenge. We had to start calling friends and colleagues, printing copies of the game, of the first prototype, sending it over by mail, and trying to get some feedback that allows us to in a few iterations come up with a format that we enjoyed and was playable. And we had about a success rate in response of about 2/3. Not everybody that would receive the game would actually give feedback or be available, but we managed to test with about 100 players, which was, well, given the circumstances, it was all right. But we want to do additional rounds of testing. So coming next, we should have the print and play version online, hopefully in summer, Portuguese and English versions. We already have some lined up translations for French, Dutch, Italian, and Spanish. We are also starting to spread the word, trying to communicate the game and make it widely known. And we need to apply for additional funding to be able to print a good number of physical copies of the game in a graphical printer. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please let me know.